Hey, everybody, and welcome to Age of Geek. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And Tracy. Tracy's just used
Parentheses.
to say I'm Jake, and he just jumps in with I'm Tracy.
And I'm Robert.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm just going to jump in too. I mean, if Tracy's jumping in, I'm jumping in.
That's the way we do it.
As long as it's shallow, because if it's too deep, then I'm kind of screwed.
Whatever. Robert, you go deeper on these shows than anybody else we have on, so the deep end is no problem for Robert. So.
Yeah, I'm so used to hearing I'm Jake, and I just the Pavlovian response is to introduce myself.
We'll be out if we meet for lunch or something, and the waitress comes over, I'm like, I'm Jake. Tracy's like, I'm Tracy, and Val types right in with I'm Val. Or I'm Val. That's usually how she says it.
Oh, so she'll be like, and I'm Robert.
There you go.
Just to keep the cadence.
Yep. Perfect.
Well, we are excited because, I hope we're excited. But we're excited to have you here, Robert. That part I know we're excited about. We're excited to have you back, Tracy. I'm the lone wolf from Age of Geek. But we have some great guests, and I'm excited to be here with both of you. And we are talking about the DCU announcements. I think that's what we're calling it now, right? DCU?
DCU. Yes.
James Gunn made some major announcements about what the slate is and what their plan is. For the future. He says it's a 10-year plan, which I think is what he said. Something like 10-year plan.
8 to 10 years was the original comment, and then 10 is what he's been kind of sticking with lately.
Yeah. So a 10-year plan for the DC universe. It's going to be more interconnected with the TV stuff, connecting with the movie stuff, connecting with animated stuff. Kind of. And we'll talk about that a little bit.
And video games.
And games.
And video games. Yeah. But he added an escape valve in there for them as well, for the stuff that isn't going to be connected. And we'll talk about that because there's some big projects that are related to that. But overall, he says they have a plan. I feel like we've heard that before. What are your guys' overall impressions from what he announced and the direction that he and Peter Safran seem to be going with the DC universe?
Tracy.
Jump in.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I would say that this sounds, I think that my comment to people when they've asked me about it has been, it sounds promising. Mm-hmm. I don't want to put all of my eggs into one basket and just go, it's perfect, because we haven't seen anything yet.
Right.
But listening to what the initial announcement, where they were like, we have a plan, and then all the speculation that came out from all of the fanboys going, it's going to be this, it needs to be this, it should be this, and him going, nobody knows what it's going to be yet. I think that he was trying to manage expectations early and then take, the next few months to flesh it out with Peter Safran, what they were going to do. And then when they made the announcement last week, I didn't want to throw myself out of a tall building. It was great. I think that they've set themselves up with a framework. I think it's probably the best way to put it. And they have a plan for television. They have a plan for movies. They have a plan to keep people for projects and, rope them into 10-year contracts, which I think is good because it shows they want this kind of longevity that they've had elude them for so long, or in a manner that's eluded them for so long. And that being said, I'm hopeful. What he announced with the 10 projects they announced didn't make me worry too much. I think that they were working with a pretty clean slate, and they want it to be, it sounds like he wants it to be fun.
Yes.
And that's something that has sorely been missing from most of the last wave of DC movies is fun. I mean, they've had jokes, they've had these things that are like, oh, haha, you made it funny, that's great. But the movies have been bleak. Honestly, they've been bleak. Yeah. And, with DC having some of the most recognizable properties in the world, and for people to be like, I came out of that movie and it was just like, meh. It doesn't seem like it should follow. And for Marvel to come out and bring C and D list characters and put them as, the heads of their own movies, and people to come out, that was fantastic. I had a great time watching this. I would watch it again. It just kind of seems like, fun sounds like something that we need from the DC universe, and
Yeah.
something that's a little brighter and more hopeful. So that's my take.
Ant-Man's the perfect example. Like when I heard they were making an Ant-Man movie, I'm like, really? And then I saw it, and I'm like, okay, I was wrong. I'm in. Yeah.
Iron Man, when it came out, Iron Man was not an A-list superhero. He was not an A-list Marvel title.
Well, they had sold off all their A-list people.
True.
And Spider-Man were their two A-list properties, and they were sold off to other companies. And they came out with Iron Man. I'm like, I have no desire to see an Iron Man movie. He's never been interesting to me in the comics. And then I saw it. And I was like, yeah, no, this is good. So I think you're right, Robert. They've been able to do that. And Ant-Man's another great example. Guardians of the Galaxy, when they announced that, I was like, that's it. This is going to be the big flop for Marvel because nobody cares about a talking tree and a talking raccoon.
But now everybody does.
Everybody does.
And there's two roller coaster or two attractions in Disneyland and Disney World because of that. Yeah.
And Volume 3 is coming out this year, and I think it's one of the most anticipated movies of the year. So
yeah.
Marvel's been able to do that, and I think part of that is the tone has been so different because it's fun to go to a Marvel movie. Like I have to gear myself up to go see some of the DC movies that have come out.
They had a few exceptions. Shazam, Aquaman. To me was fun. I mean, it was silly, but it has to be. Like it's Aquaman, you know?
Yeah. Well, Shazam's an interesting one, and it's a good place to start with a lot of these announcements because Shazam, Fury of the Gods is coming out shortly here. And I feel a little bit bad for Shazam because James Gunn kind of almost dismissed the character out of hand. It was like, we're going to have our main core properties, and then there's Shazam, who's always just kind of out there doing his own thing. It's not really part of anything anyway, and Fury of the Gods is coming out, and that's happening. Is there a future for Zachary Levi and Shazam, or is this his final ride?
Well, his recent tweets didn't help, but I think that he's going to be okay.
Is he going to be more okay than Dwayne Johnson?
I think he's going to be okay. I don't think that Shazam's going to be on their big plans, but I think a lot's going to depend on the box office on this one.
I will counter that. I think Shazam would be second, possibly third, not Gods and Monsters.
Right.
I think it'll be like chapter 2, possibly chapter 3. So we'll see something. I would love to see Zachary Levi back and Asher Angel.
Yes.
Depending on, how he ages up and whether he can still play the role. But Zachary Levi is going back to it, fun. Shazam. He plays it's literally big with superpowers, and he does that so well.
Yeah. He was a great casting for the role.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't know that I would see Zachary Levi as a big main title superhero for any other superhero, but Shazam, it works because
it works, yeah. And that's the one thing that DC has done well is their casting. Like their casting has been really, really good for the most part. But Zack Snyder was more interested in deconstructing heroes than he was in building up heroes.
Yes.
And I think that we're going to get the opposite of that with James Gunn and with Safran, at least from their discussions. I love the idea that they're bringing back a Superman who is inherently good, who isn't, I don't know what the word I'm trying to think of is, but conflicted. And I mean, he's obviously going to be conflicted between being Kryptonian and being, raised by his parents and stuff. But I like the idea that we're going back to the traditional Superman. And I think that's going to set the tone for everything else. And Jake, you mentioned when they were talking, I think James Gunn and Peter Safran were in a really, really difficult spot because DC is a mess and they're trying to clean up the mess and then build for the future. And so you've got you've got Shazam coming first, and they said that leads into the Flash. Then the Flash is going to reset the timeline.
Yes. And also lead into Blue Beetle.
Then you've got Blue Beetle, which is a standalone. They said that is like completely by itself, and then they can go right into Superman and start
Aquaman 2.
Oh, you're right. Aquaman 2. Yes. And then into Superman. Yes, correct.
And so I'm excited about Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle has the opportunity for DC to be like their Iron Man in that people have heard of Blue Beetle, but there's not a lot of people that are going to be overly familiar with Blue Beetle. He's not Batman, Superman. He's not the Flash or Green Lantern or even Aquaman. If you're familiar with the DC properties, you've rubbed up against Blue Beetle, if nothing else, and you might even know there's multiple Blue Beetles and things like that. But I don't think people are super familiar with this character. So It really is an opportunity to be one of those titles that, if they do it right, could be a really big success for them.
It could be a sleeper. Yeah. It could sleep up on people.
And it also, I think, will be something they could use to tie into a younger audience as well.
I agree.
Because the younger audiences are going to know Blue Beetle from Young Justice.
Correct.
And there was something else that he was in recently, and I can't remember what it was. One of the other animated features from, I think, the Tomorrowverse he's popped up in.
Yeah.
But they'll have at least that recognition. Some of the older audiences are going to recognize the name from the 90s and 2000s Justice League International with Ted Kord. So it's got a chance to pull a number of people in, and on a long shot, older audiences may know it from the Dan Garrett days. I mean, that's going to be a little bit more of a stretch to get an audience that old into the theaters for this newfangled Blue Beetle movie with a younger kid that they know nothing about.
The nice thing is word of mouth on this from the beginning has been quite high. People are the insiders who have known about the production say that whereas Batgirl was troubled from the beginning. Like, you heard all sorts of stuff and you kept going, well, maybe it'll be okay. Maybe this is just rumor. But when it kept adding up, but it's been the opposite with Blue Beetle. It was originally just going to be on HBO Max, wasn't it? And then they decided to updo to the theater.
Move it to the theater. So
that's a good sign.
Though, what's interesting is you've heard really good things about Blue Beetle, and I think Blue Beetle is late summer this year, early fall.
I think so.
Like, it's later this year. But before that, we have the Flash movie, which everybody at the studio is saying, look, this is the best superhero movie I've ever seen, period. Yet we have not seen a single trailer, teaser, footage, anything from this movie.
Yeah.
Aren't we supposed to next week with the Super Bowl?
Super Bowl.
Is that supposed to be their big release?
Finally see something at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And as long as it's not him watching a car flip over his head in slow motion, and him playing with hot dog, getting a hot dog, I'll be okay. If it's almost anything but that, I'll be fine.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a very pivotal movie for the DC universe because it does kind of reset everything. It's going to be based on the Flashpoint storyline, how much, movies take liberties with that, obviously, with what's in the comics and things like that. But we're supposedly going to see 2 different Batmans in it. We're going to see 2 different Flashes in it, at least. So it'll be
one Supergirl.
Yeah, and we're going to see Supergirl.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see. I'm just nervous that we are this close to release and we're just barely getting the first trailer at the Super Bowl.
I think a lot of it was the problems that Ezra Miller's had.
I think that's a huge part.
I think
Wait a minute, Ezra Miller had problems? Do tell. No, and to be honest, that's one of the things that concerns me the most about this, because one of the things that DC has not done is distance themselves from Miller in the middle of all of this, and with all of the outcries from fans and people in media going, you might want to just reshoot. I mean, it's been done before. You're ways in, but it can be done. And I have to admit, I am kind of proud of Warner Brothers for going, he's troubled. We know this. He's taking his steps to get his life in order and to make restitution. But I don't know if the iceberg has gone too far in at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, that's my concern too, and especially because of how easily they've cut ties with some of the other actors that have been involved in some of the
and
DC.
over far less.
Yeah.
But I mean, far be it from me to talk out of turn.
Yeah, I mean, I don't make those decisions, obviously, but yeah, it's an interesting move, and that part is a struggle for me because Ezra Miller obviously has had a lot of issues behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And
but I think it's interesting is that they did not announce another Flash. And then James Gunn did say it's going to kind of depend on. He said, Ezra Miller is in treatment. We're going to wait and see how they handle that.
Yes.
And I think that's a very smart way to go.
Yeah.
Especially this far in, like Robert said. I mean,
it's cagey.
The film was
it's a very cagey. It's a very slippery slope too.
Wasn't this film first announced before the TV show even started?
Like no.
Originally, it's been in production. It's been.
Well, I think they announced it back like 10 years ago, and then they started filming like 5 years ago or something.
Well, they started filming after Justice League.
Yeah.
Once it did. To be honest, it did fair numbers at the box office because people were just like, "Oh, we get all the big characters in one." But yeah, they'd announced it, close to a decade back.
Yeah.
It was. I think that was shortly after they had originally announced Black Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's been a 15-year process to get that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
but DC has also had one other problem, really quick.
Yeah.
And that's that they've had something on their books that will literally would not allow them to have a character in more than one medium at a time, which is why you never had more than one Superman TV show or movie out at a time.
Oh,
Batman never appeared in more than one thing at a time. They might have had a cartoon and they pitch it way younger. But for the longest time, DC was like, it's going to confuse audiences. And then Gunn comes out with his announcement last week. Well, we're going to have 2 Batman, and one of them is going to be Elseworlds, which is something they should have done from the beginning.
I agree 100%, and that brings up what we mentioned before, because we're talking about all this interconnectivity, and they said, but, and there's a big but there. There are some projects that aren't going to fit in there, and those are going to be Elseworlds titles, like Matt Reeves' the Batman movie, like the next Joker movie, and I agree, Robert. Why didn't they do this from the beginning? Elseworlds is such a brilliant thing in the comics because it's given us amazing stories that you can go back in their standalone graphic novel type stories that are fantastic, and they could have been this all along.
I think the problem is that they claimed that they put Zack Snyder in charge, but Zack Snyder didn't want to be a like the guy at Marvel. He didn't want to be
Kevin Feige. Yeah,
he didn't want to be Feige. He wanted to concentrate on his films and give input on others. And so you didn't have anybody really kind of making these long-term thoughts and decisions. It was more of, well, let's throw this at the wall, or let's try this.
And then in the meantime, they had Jeff Johns in there as well, trying to run everything. And I love Jeff Johns, the comic book guy. Like he did a lot of great things for DC comics wise, but he's got
not the right guy for this role
and movie production. And come on, he gave him the keys to the kingdom and he didn't even know what to do with it, unfortunately.
Right.
And
they kind of threw the keys after that at Zack Snyder, whether he wanted him or not. And as I've said before, I think Snyder is a great visual artist.
Right.
Give him source material,
right,
and go, here's Watchmen, use this as your storyboards, and put it up there and make it look pretty. Fantastic. Watchmen looked like a moving comic book. 300, same thing. But if you kind of go, hey Zach, we've got a rough idea, I want you to flesh it out and go from there, you get Batman versus Superman.
Yeah,
which is one of the worst superhero films in the last
ever eternity. Superman 4. I'm sorry, Superman 3, which never happened.
Right.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I remember the movie. I remember Superman 2. And it was
Superman Returns after that.
Superman 4. And I was like, I don't know why they skipped that.
Funny, because I thought it just went 1, 2, Returns, and then the Crisis.
I like the Richard Pryor. I'm sorry.
But
I'm not sure that we can be friends anymore. I love Richard Pryor, don't get me wrong, but that movie was a dog.
Oh, it's terrible, but I grew up with it, so there's like a little soft spot in my heart for it.
But
Angry drunk Superman flicking peanuts at his reflection.
As a Superman fan, the fact that I'm willing to own Superman 4 but Superman 3 to tell you how I really feel about Superman 3. Because Superman 4 is not a great movie either.
I have never seen Superman 4, and I am proud of that.
Quest for Peace, right?
What's that?
That's the Quest for Peace.
Yes, the Quest
Yes.
for Peace with the Solar Man guy. That anyway.
Oh, that's right.
I don't want to spoil it for you, Robert. If you're going to go,
you're not going to. No, there's almost no chance of spoiling anything for me with this. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Okay. Well, but speaking of Superman, we've kind of mentioned this already. That is going to be the next movie after Aquaman. I'm glad Aquaman is still part of the DCU, and I'm hoping Jason Momoa went and met with James Gunn and Peter Safran and said the meeting went really well. He was really excited about what came out of that meeting, which is great. I would like to see him continue to play Aquaman. The rumors of him playing Lobo, I mean, he'd be fine as Lobo. I don't think he'd be bad, but I don't know. I'm excited to have him continue playing Aquaman, if that's what happens.
I agree with that. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's really smart with this lineup that we talked about a little bit is you have some major staples, right? You've got Superman. You're going to have a new Batman, which is very interesting with the new Robin, which we can talk about in a minute. And then you've got Amanda. Then on the TV side, you've got Amanda Waller. You've got the Green Lanterns, but they're saying that'll be like a True Detective type story.
In space.
Then you have these weird things that nobody really knows about, right? So then you've got the Creatures animated show. You've got the Authority. So there's a lot. Booster Gold, even though he's fairly well known, but he's not a main household
He's
name.
with Blue Beetle. Come on.
Yeah. And Booster Gold as a TV series, I sign me up for that because I think his character lends itself to a weekly sitcom type series because of who he is and the way to play up for the fame and everything else. Booster Gold is a great character. I mean, he's not my favorite superhero by any means, but he's a great character in the DC universe, and so I'm excited for that. When we talk about Superman, James Gunn has said he's writing this one. He's saying this is going to be a younger Superman. A quote that I've got here, my brother actually shared it on social media, and of course now it's going to be gone. Hold on. The quote that he shared was, "He is kindness in a world that thinks that kindness is old-fashioned."
Yes.
But I think that's kind of true for a lot of people's expectation of Superman, especially for Clark Kent. I mean, even if you look at the 78 and the Christopher Reeve era movies, Clark was Midwestern, wholesome. Gosh, it's swell Lois. That he's that guy,
right?
And the world around him, honestly, wasn't all that great. I mean, if you looked at the Daily Planet, they were not all nice people in there.
No, Perry White. I mean, he was a little hard nosed. He was,
but I think the Perry was old school newspaper guy, so I get that. But I mean, some of the other reporters just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever, Clark, do your thing.
Yeah.
And I think that Superman, I think that one of the things that I'm looking forward to the most is seeing if Gunn can write a Superman story that brings out the person who's both hopeful in the people around him and their ability to rise above, and inspirational at the same time, but without making him jaded like our last Superman was. And to be fair to the former regime, they were trying something different, and they literally brought us a Superman that outside of an Elseworld we had never seen, which is somebody who questioned from the beginning, what should I do? And you had Jonathan who was like, maybe people should die in order to keep you safe. And I'm like, as a father, I understand that. As a comic book reader, however, that is not the Jonathan Kent that I'm used to seeing.
Right.
I struggle with Jonathan. There's no way he's like, no, I'd probably be better let people die, son. So sorry.
Yeah. I was like, I like Kevin Costner, but that was not.
That rubbed
that
me.
was, yeah.
So I agree. I think it'll be interesting. I think they can do it. I look at Captain America as being a similar type of character, and Marvel has handled that really well post Avengers. So Winter Soldier and on, I think they've done a good job. I felt like they made him in Avengers, he was a little too cheesy for my taste. His suit was too bright. He was
Okay, but what about First Avenger?
okay. First Avenger was amazing.
But
So
that's America's
so it was
ass.
amazing, cheesy, and then back to good.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. I'm there now.
So First Avenger, he's not playing in our world yet, right? He's still back in the 40s, and everything kind of fits and blends in. And he was still over the top, like, I don't like bullies. I could take this all day. I could, whatever. But then bringing him into the modern world is a challenge, and I think Marvel has done that relatively well.
I
So,
read something earlier, and I wish I could find it quickly, about Steve Rogers in Avengers and his attitude, because he was a little cheesy and he was a little bit
naive,
possibly even jingoistic at that point still.
Yeah.
But somebody made a really fantastic argument about that, and I realize this is a DC thing, so I'll make it short. About how, for him, everything that he'd fought for and ditched that plane for happened for him 2 weeks before the events of Avengers.
True.
Yeah.
And he wakes up and Fury's like, yeah, you got to go do a thing, but we're not going to tell you all the things. And oh yeah, we're using this as a power source. We're making weapons from it, and he's like, didn't I just put this thing away so that nobody could do exactly what you're doing? And that's why he was a little salty with Fury in the first movie. And I'm like, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. Maybe they've done a better job than I give them credit for in Avengers. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on Avengers. That's a different episode.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that they're coming out and leading this all off with Superman, because that's going to be kind of their bedrock. And we're going to know really early on if we're going to like the way that this is going to go.
I disagree.
There is a lot riding on this movie.
I only disagree for the fact that I'm hopeful that they do. I really do hope that this works out the way that you're saying, but I don't think that one and done is really going to tell the tale. I think that they could come out and it could be gangbusters, and we could just be like, "This is amazing," and then the next movie could just be like, "Well,
that's a good point." But
they got lightning in a bottle. Can they get it again with the third movie?
If you're going to get the audience trust, you've got to do it on the first try. Like Iron Man came out, and we were all like, "Okay."
But I think that's Blue Beetle. I think that's actually going to be more Blue Beetle, because since that's part of the Gods and Monsters slate. Actually, it's before that, but they're still using that as kind of their bridge movie. I think that seeing how this comes out is going to be a lot more critical to people's willingness to go, do I shell out however much it is for two people to go and get popcorn and everything and sit in a theater for 2 hours and go, didn't we do this before, and wasn't it just as bad?
Right.
So you've got to also work against that. I mean,
that's true.
They've got a huge uphill climb, I think, to get out of the hole that the old DCEU set up.
Yes,
I agree.
I like the fact that we're not getting an origin story with Superman, much like with the Batman. We were just like,
here it is.
Here he is, and
I'm
he's already at the Daily Planet. There's already a world of superheroes. We don't have to introduce that. We don't have to do the Ma and Pa Kent thing. I'm sure that they'll play a part in this.
Where he came from, Tracy? How am I going to know where Superman came from and got all his powers if they don't give me the origin story?
I mean, how did Batman become Batman? What happened?
He got bitten by a radioactive bat.
I watched the Batman last year. I have no idea why this guy dresses up like a bat. No idea.
He was going to a goth party and just got turned around, and it's like, oh, here's some guys I can beat up. Okay, well, here we go.
This works, yeah. So, no, I agree. We've seen the origin story. It's good. We can jump in.
Yeah.
Also, for the movies, we have The Authority, which I am not familiar with The Authority at all.
I'm not familiar at all with them.
So, I think this is actually shrewd on their part, because this is actually one of the Wildstorm titles that DC folded in 30 years ago. And The Authority is one way to think of them is like a Justice League that's not necessarily amoral, but they're willing to break things to fix everything else. And their moral code is not necessarily more flexible, although it is for some of the characters. But they're the ones who are like, we came to fix this, trust us, and we'll take care of it. But they're I think that it's a fantastic move to go. We're bringing these characters in that are similar in some of the power sets that you're used to, and some are just completely different, and characters that are going to be completely new to a lot of people, and I think that's great. Personally, I think they should. I really hope that their second wave includes some milestone characters. I would love to see that.
Yeah, it will be interesting because it is such a different. They are such different characters than what you're seeing in Superman, and so you're going to get a good juxtaposition there. And I'm hoping that watching the Authority is going to feel very different, but still part of the same universe. And I think that will be important to set that tone because early on, Marvel was able to do that in a lot of ways with their characters, and I think we need to see that again. Whereas with Snyder, it felt like this is like a Batman comic that Superman happens to be the main character in, and it doesn't need it needs to feel different from movie to movie, but the same.
Exactly. And I think you're going to get that with Gunn. I think he's going to allow different directors and filmmakers to play, and there'll be a sandbox with walls that they have to stay within, but they can build what they want inside of that sandbox. That's the feeling I get.
And it's a good opportunity too for some good representation. I think one of the main characters in the Authority is part of the LGBTQ community.
A couple of them are.
Are there a couple? Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see. Yeah, because you're going to have Midnighter and Apollo.
Right.
And I think that...
And they're married in the comics, is that right?
They are, and I don't know if they'll bring that in, right up in the movie. They say that for Authority too.
Spoilers, sorry guys.
But I think that getting some representation in the movies would be good. I'd love to see a little bit more. Of all the 10 titles that they announced, I think that they've got like 2 African American characters that are prominent, which is like, it's something. It's a start. And he's working with not just having to get representation, but bring all the characters back to people that they love and bring them back in familiar context.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Right. More is always better, but at least
there's something.
The starting point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then movie-wise, next we have The Brave and the Bold, which is going to introduce the DCU Batman and his Robin, which is going to be his son, Damian Wayne, who's a little turd, I'll be honest.
You're not wrong.
Well, I mean, it's not his fault. I mean, like, he was raised from birth to be an assassin. I mean, come on.
Well,
sure.
That's true. But think about this though. So we get Batman with Damian, and if they're trying to tie all of the DC multimedia packages together, this does mean we get an adult Nightwing, we get an adult Batgirl, we get an adult Red Hood, and possibly even a Red Robin.
And an older Batman, which would be fun to contrast against the younger Superman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited for all of that because again, we don't have to start at the beginning with these characters each time. Their stories established well enough. We have seen Batman and all of his multiple times. We don't need to reestablish the character. So let's bring in. I don't want to wait 20 years to get to Damian Wayne and a grown-up Nightwing and because we'll never make it at the rate these. In that aspect, in that aspect, I'm excited for it, and I love the title "Brave and the Bold." That was one of my favorite cartoons with Batman in it. I don't know how you bring Damian Wayne into a movie that would be the same tone as Batman: The Brave and the Bold cartoon series was, but
I think that the Brave and the Bold movie will be closer in tone to the comics than to the cartoon series. And it's going to have to be when you're bringing in a 11 to 13-year-old assassin as Robin. It's like, oh, we can't quite play in that in the cartoon sandbox. So I think it's going to be a little closer to the older 70s and 80s Brave and the Bold, where the stories are going to be a bit grittier. And quite frankly, I look forward to a gritty but not grimdark Batman.
Yes. Yeah. And I love the fact that he's got to reconcile this kid. Like, this is my kid who I haven't known. Like, I didn't know I had this kid. I didn't raise this kid. But now I'm kind of responsible for. And he's going to reflect, like, the worst impulses of Batman back onto him. And Batman's going to have to be like, oh crap! I see myself there.
It's a very different dynamic than we've seen with any of the other Robins, because the other Robins do the opposite, right? They bring the best out of Batman, and he's darker, and they're trying to pull him sometimes. Oh, Robert disagrees with me. I'm painting.
No, I'm going through Robins. I'm trying to think. Dick,
Movie-wise.
yes. Jason, not so much.
Well, yeah, but nobody liked Jason. That's why they killed him.
But they brought him back.
Well, I know. But the fans didn't like him. The fans killed him. I just walked through by DC fans. They killed off Jason Todd.
No, and that's fine. I mean, Jason for a while did, but then Jason went down his own dark path.
Right. Yeah.
Tim, I think, was good for him because it brought Batman back.
Yeah.
And Damian was a challenge and continues to be a challenge.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting because it'll be Batman that will be bringing Damian back from the brink. And that's going to be a new role that we haven't seen on the screen. To be fair, we haven't seen a lot of Robin on the screen. We are not going to count Chris O'Donnell. And we are,
what was that, Tracy?
Yeah. We're not going to count Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
No, we had a Robin costume in the Batcave.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Jason Todd is on screen, or at least his costume. I'm assuming that was Jason Todd, because
I would assume so.
But who knows? We'll never know.
We will never know.
I don't know how to break this to the Snyderverse fans. It's not going to get restored. They're not going to ever bring Snyderverse back. It's time to move on. All right. And then we have Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. I'm excited about this one.
I've heard the comic was fantastic.
Yeah, the comic's really. Yeah.
I haven't read it, but I've heard it's fantastic. And just from hearing them discuss it when they were going through the slate, I like the idea that she's going to be very different from Superman. Like, to have that contrast to play against, I think that'll be very fun.
Interesting. Hang on a second, because you just reminded me of something now. We're getting a contrast with Batman and Robin by virtue of their characters. You're going to get a contrast with Superman and Supergirl because she grew up. They're keeping the Argo origin, and she comes to Earth with a completely different perspective than he has. We're also going to get, on the TV side, we're going to get the Lanterns with John and Hal. So I think we're going to see a lot of interactive character play between some of the leads and how they approach different things.
Yeah, I like that.
That's really smart on DC's part, because as you go through the list, like you said, that becomes very apparent that that's intentional. And I think that's really smart to build that in. The final movie that we have on this slate that was announced is Swamp Thing. Listen, what can you be except excited for Swamp Thing?
Right?
Unless you know nothing about it.
I wanted Guillermo del Toro to do it, but I don't think that's going to happen. But rumor is James Mangold, who did Ford versus Ferrari, who did Logan, who's doing the next Indiana Jones. I think he could do a home run. And that's a very interesting character that could be very cool on the big screen. If you go back and look at some of the artwork that Bernie Wrightson did for Swamp Thing, it's outstanding.
Yeah.
And this will be not only their entry into horror, but they could also go into more of the supernatural, and we could follow the comics and get a John Constantine out of this as well.
Yes.
It could be
would not surprise me.
Justice League Dark and all of that, which is not a bad thing either. And really looking at these, you mentioned Superman kind of being that jumping off point, Tracy, at the beginning. And I think each of these films can really be a jumping off point for a lot of different things within the DCU. But not to be left out, there's some good stuff coming to TV. I guess we're still calling it TV. It's going to be streaming on HBO Max.
Yeah.
It's what it is now, right? But another one going into that Monsters vein is the Creature Commandos, which I'll be honest sounds like a really bad, like, Hasbro sponsored Hanna-Barbera.
It sounds like a Nintendo 64 game.
Yeah.
It's actually, I think that they were originally in the 60s when they first came out. The Creature Commandos, and it was, all of the monsters of the DC universe who were drafted into military service somehow, basically.
Yeah. Listen, if I've learned anything about U.S. military history, we'll draft undead, doesn't matter.
You got a pulse? No, that's okay. Just keep going. You're good. You're good.
That's fine. You don't have it. That's totally fine. Frankenstein's more get in there.
But I think it's going to be one of their more fun, more out there like Doom Patrol was for the last slate. I think that it'll be something that people will be like, okay, let me check this out, and it will be nothing that most people expect, and hopefully will be just a really fun ride.
Mm-hmm.
And it highlights for me a lot of what DC has going for it as far as their vast library of characters that they can draw on. You know, as they folded in like the Wildstorm characters and the other Image houses that they bought out, Vertigo and things like that. Like they've got some characters that they can tap into, and with HBO Max being available to them, this cartoon can be like the Harley Quinn cartoon where it's TV and then MA. Even though it's got a cheesy name, I think that's an exciting thing for like people are going to listen to that, and that's intriguing, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that James Gunn did say that each story is going to determine what the rating is basically going to be. He's like, we're not going to have a rated R Superman. We're just not. But Creature Commandos could very easily be a rated M.
Swamp Thing with its past is probably going to be rated R.
Could be R very easily, absolutely.
It's probably going to
be R. If
Waller is definitely going to be an R. But I like the fact that you've got Creature Commandos, which you have one of the greatest villain names ever with Dr. Phosphorus. I just love that name. I think that is fantastic. But you've got Weasel from the Suicide Squad, and then followed up with Waller, the TV series, where she played a prominent role in Peacemaker, who was in the Suicide Squad. And so I think that's going to help lead into those.
Yeah.
And using Waller as an example, I think that's one of the, I think that they're using some of what came before as an interesting soft bridge. Like I was delighted when they announced that we're not getting a third Amanda Waller. Bonus points if you name who the first one was. The first live action Waller was.
I knew this at one point because I actually picked her in Craig Price's cast off to replace Viola Davis in Suicide Squad, but I can't remember the actress.
Angela Bassett.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, who should have been Storm, but that's another story altogether. But I love the fact that they're keeping Viola Davis because, quite frankly, she has come to embody what I expect to see for Amanda Waller on screen.
Yeah.
And to be honest, she's a phenomenal actress, and apparently she just got her EGOT tonight by getting a Grammy.
She did.
Oh, awesome.
So we know that she's a phenomenal actress, but the fact that the writers have also nailed the character, who's somebody who's just like, that person needs to die, go kill him, or we'll blow your head off, and has no compunction about it. And I think that it's just great to see that they're having that kind of soft through line that continues. That's not necessarily Elseworlds.
Yeah, when Gunn was directing Peacemaker, he said when she's the nicest, most genteel woman you'll ever want to meet. But as soon as she becomes Amanda Waller, she scares the bleep out of you.
Although
perfect.
It is interesting, Robert, when you say they're taking the things that kind of worked before and still carrying them through. And it's interesting that one of the things that obviously worked with James Gunn in charge is James Gunn's The Suicide Squad.
Although he has said it's not going to be the Gunverse. He did come out and explicitly say, yes, there are people that I've worked with before that are going to continue working with, but this is not the James Gunn universe. This is the DC universe. And I think that awareness for him was important to be able to go, yes, I've got the keys to the kingdom, but I am not, cruel, but I'm not even benevolent overlord. I'm just like the guy who has the keys.
Right.
That being said, he is writing Superman, The Authority, probably going to have his hand in a lot of the Waller.
He wrote Creature Commandos.
Yeah,
but Creature Commandos doesn't seem like a stretch for him, to be honest.
No.
I mean, all of these to combine, I'm thinking Creature Commandos, that's right up your alley.
About the most with him writing is Superman. He said all the right things, so I'm okay. I'm going to be optimistic. But,
cautiously.
Cautiously, yeah. Only because I've been burned by DC before with Superman. It's fine. Comics, TV, doesn't matter.
Show me on the comic book where DC hurt you.
I can show you 6 that they put into BVS.
So we talked about Waller as a series that it will have characters from Peacemaker involved. That will be live action, where Creature Commandos will be animated, but the same actor who did Weasel in Suicide Squad will voice the Weasel in, and Gunn said that was something that was going to happen throughout with the animated characters.
Yeah, the animated characters and even the video game characters will have the same vocal as the actor in the live action. Yeah.
And then we get Booster Gold, which we kind of hit on a little bit. I'm expecting it to be over the top, insane. This guy is not good at his job of being a superhero, but that's all right. That's what makes it entertaining.
But he is. You just don't know it.
It makes me think of the TV series Chuck.
Yeah.
Where you have this guy who just is going to kind of bumble his way through it, but yet somehow it gets done at the end.
Booster Gold is more like Michael Scott as a superhero. Like,
that's true.
Trying really, really hard, but he has no idea what he's doing.
That's a good point.
I will agree. I think that that's true for the beginning of Booster Gold. I think that he got there. And I think that once they got past the show him as a bumbling superhero, show what he's really doing, and they show that he's actually protecting the time stream, and he has to do this to keep people from unquantum leaping what he does, basically.
Right.
And I'm like, and as somebody who grew up, with Booster Gold #1 and loved the character when it came out, and I was just like, that's the perfect twist for this character, because quite frankly, he was one of the most shallow, selfish characters in the 80s when he came out. It was like, well, capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah. And he evolves, obviously, and changes. So it'll be interesting to see where they take him in this show.
Yeah.
But I think it has the potential to be really entertaining, and I hope they cast the part well and all of that. And then we've got Lanterns, a true detective style show centered on intergalactic cops Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan.
They've already done this in comics. Final Crisis.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's a partnership that works really well because they are very different characters depending on which Hal Jordan you go with.
Also, depending on which Jon Stewart you get.
Yeah, that's true.
John has changed slightly over the years. They've made him less angry.
Yeah.
And more centered. I think that, finally going back and giving him the Justice League animated series origin and tying that back into his backstory calmed him down a lot. Because he was, if you read the first, was it Green Lantern 87, where he first shows up, not a happy guy. I mean, he's very focused, and that part is the same. But I kind of want to see a bit of not quite best friends, but guys who have that potential to get there, like Kirk and Spock in the Kelvin universe, where they do not like each other at first. I'd love that, and see how they evolve into a partnership, and that evolves into a friendship.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to see that. I think that sums up the relationship really well. Kirk and Spock in the Kelvin universe is fantastic. And frustrating and everything that it should be in the storyline. So it works really well. And I'd like to see that with Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. I'm just excited to see, hopefully, some decent Green Lantern.
Non-CGI suit.
It could have been so good.
No, no racetrack.
Yeah.
Nope, the racetrack was actually fine. The racetrack, because it should have been it should have been Kyle doing a racetrack.
Yeah.
But the racetrack, I think, was a fun, silly thing that, I mean, let's face it, Hal Jordan is known for giant baseball bats and giant boxing gloves. So a racetrack, Hot Wheels track, not that far off.
Not that far.
Right. No, there was a lot wrong with the Green Lantern movie. I don't think Ryan Reynolds was the problem. I don't think all of the special effects were it. Anyway, we don't need to talk about that movie. We're hoping Lantern will be better.
We will just go. Yes. In Gunn we trust.
But again, I like the idea of this being a detective show, and you've got this wacky creature show, and then you have Superman that we know, and then you have everything feels different, but yet still can fit under this umbrella, which I'm very excited about. Because as much as I love Marvel, sometimes it does feel a little homogenized, right? And so I like the fact that this is really risky to me. This is like taking some big swings, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Marvel has taken a couple of risks,
Yes.
but nothing has been that far afield.
Right.
And the fact that they announced so many disparate parts of the universe. I mean, you definitely get superhero, but you get supernatural in a couple of things. You get spycraft in another,
Right.
and we
And
don't
they've done
know
different genres, like the spy thriller and some other things. But,
exactly. And
yeah.
we don't know. We know that they're supposed to work under the same in the same universe, but we don't know how yet. And I think that getting to find out how that works is going to be part of the. Hopefully, that's part of the journey they're crafting for the audiences.
Hopefully
Is to make it fun for us to find out. So if you've got these people doing, effectively checkmate over here at Suicide Squad, and you've got the most powerful being on the planet over here, and then you've got the Authority who are just like, we're just going to do what we want. How do these three play in the same sandbox and not, come to loggerheads all the time? Because I actually kind of want them to.
Yeah.
And I think that would be fantastic to have them go, look, you just stay on that side of the line. We'll stay over here and don't come over here. Because the Authority would be like, I don't care if you're Superman. We're doing work. Step off.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I look forward to that kind of soft antagonism between the groups and the different areas of it. Creature Commando, somebody I want to see, Batman go, oh God, that's horrifying. To me, that's horrifying.
Yeah.
I'm going to be over here in my cave and I'm going to be quiet.
Yeah. You guys do it. I don't want to deal with that. That quiet antagonism I think will be good to build some of the tension, to get us to some of the stories. The concept for Batman versus Superman is not a bad concept. No. We just weren't ready to get there yet at the time that it
didn't do any build up to it.
Right.
This is what we're going to do.
Where we're going to get characters and stories and things like that are going to get us to some of those movies where you're going to get the crossovers, or some of those series where you're going to get the crossovers, and it's going to make sense that they're butting heads a little bit and that they're, antagonistic, and they're going to know. I'm hoping that they're going to live in a universe where they know who each other are. Like, they know Superman's going to know who the Authority is,
right?
And the Lanterns are going to know who the Creature Commandos are, and be familiar with each other. So when they cross over, it makes sense. Like, they're going to understand their reputations. Batman and Superman are going to know that they're out there doing this stuff. And I think it has the potential to be much more cohesive and make much more sense.
Yeah.
Your lips to God's ears.
And then we've got one more show. We've got Kingdom Come.
Kingdom Come?
Or not Kingdom Come, the Wonder Woman.
Paradise Lost.
Paradise Lost. Thank you.
How did I miss Kingdom Come? Because I would be on board with that.
That's phase 3.
That series on HBO Max. Sign me up.
So you do get an Amazon show.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep, and they've described that as Game of Thrones style show set in Themyscira. I can never say that.
Close enough. We'll give it to you.
Thank you. But yeah, home of the Amazons. So
this is the potential to be a lot of fun as well.
I agree.
I think it's going to be CGI heavy, Game of Thrones, a la Game of Thrones, because we're going to see. I think we'll see the mythological pantheon here.
Yes.
I think it would be fun to have some kind of crossover where somebody comes off of Paradise Island, comes to Man's World, and has to deal with the Creature Commandos. I think that'd be awesome. Or even Swamp Thing, dealing with some of the mystical and metaphysical stuff. But I think that they're finally giving audiences a look at what shaped Wonder Woman, because we really haven't seen much outside of the Patty Jenkins movie.
Right.
And she was there for, the games, what have you, and then she's out. Or before that, it was really Linda Carter, whenever she'd call home and talk to either Carolyn Jones or Phyllis Diller, which was an odd choice for Hippolyta, but hey, go with it. A little bit of trivia for you there. Phyllis Diller was the original Hippolyta on that show.
I forgot that.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, not Phyllis Diller. I'm sorry, Cloris Leachman. I apologize.
Yes.
It was Cloris Leachman.
Right.
Still, not exactly what you would expect. But we never, we saw a little bit in the 70s. Whenever she'd go home for something or talk through the magic mirror to her mother. But I look forward to seeing something like, so there's a whole island of Wonder Women that are doing all of this, and the potential for that series is phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be really, really good. And that's the thing, looking at all of these titles and what they've described, is I look at all of them and say, that could be huge for DC. Yeah. It could be putting together the right formula here to be successful, and it may be coming at a good time. Marvel, I feel like, is starting to churn out a lot of very similar stuff, movie after movie, which is not a bad thing because I like the stuff that they're churning out. Listen, if I like a cheeseburger from a certain place, I want to go back and have that same cheeseburger day after day. I get it, but sometimes you want something different, and I think DC is maybe in a good place to bring us something different in a lot of the titles that they've got listed here. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Sounds like they're going to continue to do animated stuff. They're going to continue building the games and including that in the universe, which will be great. So down the road, do we get a Creature Commandos game? Do we get a Lanterns game?
So one of the things that I read this week about their video game, or Gunn's thoughts on the video games, is to have them as filler between movies. So they'll be set in the same universe with the same characters, but it'll be like something that happens between movie A and movie B.
Right.
But still, there will be a through line there that works, which I think is great.
I like it. I mean, if you want people, I think that's a great way to get people to go out and buy the games that maybe wouldn't otherwise, because, well, if I want to know what happens in the storyline, I'm going to go out and pick up this game, and then it'll be people like me that will go out and pick up the game and play through the first third of it and get stuck at a certain part where I can't get through, and then I'll have to read online what happens so I understand what. But that's fine. I'll still buy the game, and at that point, they don't care whether I finish it or not.
You'll listen to Cutscenes and Cupcakes to find out what happens.
Yeah, that's right. I'll go to Cutscenes and Cupcakes and have them.
But I like the fact that we're not like they didn't announce a Justice League film. They didn't announce anything like that. They're building, which is what they didn't do in the previous administration, if you will. The previous regime did not set things up. They just said, well, that's working for Marvel. We've got something similar. Let's do that.
I don't think it was even that. I think the last group was just like, Marvel's printing money over there. We can get in on that. And they just started throwing things and going, we didn't build, the audiences are like, okay, we got Superman. And we know that these other characters are out there. And then we'll stop Batman versus Superman halfway through and show you 3 trailers for 3 other characters that you heard nothing about yet.
Right.
And then put them all in a movie in the next movie.
But we're going to give you a different Batman that literally brands people and shoots them.
Look, dude has been doing this for years. He's tired. He does not have time for an extracted fight. He's like, look, y'all need to get done. We're out. You're getting branded. You're getting branded. You're getting stuck to the floor. You're going through the floor. We good? All right, let's go.
There are storylines in the comics where he does hit that point.
Yeah, but that's not the Batman that I like, and I don't think most people do.
Well, right, but I think that they went straight to the Frank Miller style Batman without getting to that.
Right.
And I think that's what threw a lot of people off. Just like, there were those who thought that it was actually a great Batman and could make the mental leap, which is good for them. But there's a lot of people who are just like, Batman just branded a guy, and he put this guy through a wall.
Right.
Yeah,
and because some people, to be honest, their last Batman before that was Biff Pal Wham Batman.
That's true.
So that's a huge leap to make.
To go from that to Frank Turner. I mean, not Frank Turner.
Fred Miller, yeah.
Frank Turner's Batman, and he's talking about pages here and there, and Be Kind is a totally different Batman.
Totally different. Frank Miller, excuse me.
I think we could have gotten there with Christopher Nolan's Batman, right? We could have gotten to the point where he's just kind of over it, and he retires. But if they had done a 4th Batman movie and he comes back and he's like, you guys, I'm tired of trying to clean up this mess. Now I'm just going to go hardcore. We could get there because we had 3 previous movies where we felt we could see that character development. To just drop in and this is the Batman that you're getting, it feels harsh.
Here, I'll help you make this transition with something that my wife brought up after we watched Matt Reeves' The Batman last year.
Mm-hmm.
She said, if you look at Pattinson's Batman, Bale's Batman, and Affleck's Batman as the same Batman, but as part of an arc, where Pattinson's Batman, granted they started him a year and a half, 2 years into his Bat career,
Right.
he's still a bit raw and unfocused in what he's doing. He knows he doesn't want anybody else to have that kind of a bad day that he had, but his anger is still very much on the surface.
I mean, it's a bad day that we don't know what really happened because it's not in the movie.
Oh, that's true. That's right. We didn't see the pearls falling. And then
In slow-mo.
Then you move to Bale's Batman, where he's come back to Gotham. He's gone back to Wayne Enterprises. He's taken over. He's got a guy in the research and development department who's building him all the fun toys, and he's much more focused in his fight and what he's taking on and what he's doing. And then you move forward to after The Dark Knight Rises into Batman vs Superman, where he's retired. He's been out of the game, but then all of a sudden he's got to get back in. And he's tired. He's broken. He's weary. And he's got to do this again. And he's the Batman that we see Ben Affleck, where he's branding guys, he's doing all this stuff. And as an arc, it's, kind of like it follows a loose thread of the arc of what it is to be Batman and what it does to you. And it's just, if you make that thread, sure. But for most people who just went straight into Batman vs Superman, it's like, but with Bam Pow.
It's hard. And so I'm hoping that they give these characters time to develop relationships, and before we really get it to that point where they're, Civil War in the Marvel universe meant something because we'd had so many movies that came before.
Actually.
And we'd had 2 Avengers movies at that point, and anyway, it made sense.
Right.
But that the different philosophies and ideologies between Batman and Superman, you've got to develop that, and you've got to see that on the screen before you now say, okay, now you're going to fight each other, because
but Bruce Wayne saw Superman fighting Zod in Metropolis and breaking buildings, and he got mad because one of was his building.
Right.
Because we saw that in the first 3 minutes of that movie, where he's just going as he's driving in his Jeep through town, just like, I'm mad.
Superman's fault. Yeah. So now I've got to take him down.
But speaking of Matt Reeves, I'm so glad that they are keeping the Batman and not trying to put him into this universe.
Yes.
Just let it be its own thing, which I'm super glad about.
And this opens the door. Sorry, Robert, what were you going to say? I cut you off.
No. I was just going to say that that's great because it gives us Elseworlds, and I think that keeping the more out there versions of characters, or the more out there origins, or even just the takes on characters, they're still valuable. There's still something there that audiences want to see. And I think that by having an Elseworlds imprint, I think that it gives them the latitude to go, you know what I'd like to see? I want to see whatever random thing. I mean, if we want to do what if Clark Kent came to Earth but landed in Gotham City and get a Speeding Bullets Batman,
right?
Or get a Holy Terror Batman, and any of the storylines they can also do to take a take on the Justice League, a period piece, and do something like Justice Riders, where it's the Justice League in the Wild West led by Wonder Woman.
Or there are so many great stories. Like, I would love to see them say, hey, let's do Red Sun and give Superman what it happened to land in Moscow instead of in Kansas, and how does that change the outcome of the world? Or you mentioned Kingdom Come, Tracy, and again, my heart skipped a beat because that's one of my comics ever.
Wait a minute, what?
See that play out, and I think it gives us that opportunity to say we can have these miniseries, we can have these series, we can have these movies that are outside the norm, and it's totally okay.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to shoehorn some of those stories into the main, we don't need to do that. Keep us with the main continuity. Keep those stories out of it, but still give us stories in some format.
The nice thing is have audiences that are used to multiverses. They're used to multiple universes. This isn't anything
No
crazy,
problem.
but you're not going to try and shoehorn um, the Joker standalone movie into Pattinson's Batman and then merge that into what they're going to do with it's just its own thing, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Yep. And
And then you get spin-offs. I mean, they call it the Batman Crime Saga, which I think is a great subtitle. But
Mm-hmm.
you've got the Penguin TV
yeah,
series coming, and that takes place a week after the Batman, and it will be about Oswald's rise to power in Gotham.
Oh, interesting.
And then there's talks that they're going to do an Arkham series, which I would die for. I think that could be so well done. It's so cool. So
yeah,
that's kind of like its own little mini universe going on over here.
yeah. And there's just so much potential for that. And it means that the animated studio that's been doing great movies can continue to do great
Yes.
movies that aren't tied in with the main continuity, so they can keep making these movies that we've all enjoyed over the years. Because now,
And that brings up one other thing, because the current slate of DC animated features are, I think they labeled it Tomorrowverse, and there's actually one that drops Tuesday, which I'm looking forward to because it's Supergirl and the Legion, and as a huge Legion fan, I don't get enough of them in any media. So the fact that they're doing that, I'm really looking forward to. And Gunn said that he wasn't sure what they're going to do as far as the Tomorrowverse goes with some of their animated stuff, because he's got his slate that he's working on. But I think that there's after this one, I think there's one or two more movies that are still scheduled to come out this year under the Tomorrowverse banner. So it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see whether or not they kind of keep those and just kind of modify some of the storylines to be part of the DCU, or if they just kind of elseworlds these and go, these were fun. This is where we're going now.
Right, right.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm excited. I've heard some critics out there talk about what was announced. I'm not sure if they're on board with what James Gunn is doing. Um, there's still plenty of the Snyderverse fanboys out there that are really, wanting to go back to that, and things like that. But I think by and
Fire
large,
James Gunn was a hashtag that was trending for a few hours, but that went away.
yeah. Well,
So
and when they made the decision to let Henry Cavill go, I think that was another time that it was,
Mm-hmm.
what is he thinking? I know for me personally, I had some reactions online. I'm sorry about that. But from a business standpoint, I think it makes sense.
yeah,
Um, and I think they're at least making decisions that show that they're going in a direction. Now
right,
we need the
right.
time to see if it's the right direction, and I hope it is.
And
For
I
the
think that one of the
first
things that
time,
people are not taking into account is that it's not James Gunn in a vacuum. It's James
Right.
Gunn and Peter Safran, and I
mhm,
think that collaboration, I think, has the potential to help steer this in a proper direction, in a good direction.
yeah,
Yep.
Because I don't think it's going to be all James Gunn just going, I'm just writing whatever I want, without anybody looking over his shoulder and going, pull back
mm,
a bit on this, or maybe not that at this point.
right, right. And I'm excited as I love Marvel. Don't get me wrong, but DC was the thing that I was into growing up, and I'm fine with both of them succeeding. And as a DC fan, there's finally like a little bit of light where we're going, okay, all right, this we're like the dog who's been abused, and you're like, like you're kind of coming out, like okay, I might let you be nice to me, but
Mm-hmm.
you're still wary. So
Yeah. I think the last time I was this hopeful was when they announced Man of Steel and some of the stuff that started coming out about Man of Steel.
yeah.
Been over a decade ago now. It's been a rough 10 years. But, so we'll see how it goes. Let us know what you think, listeners and viewers, of the DC universe and the announcements that James Gunn made last week. What are you looking forward to? What are you nervous about? Do you think it's going in the right direction? Make sure that if you're watching this on YouTube, that you like and comment on this video. Comment below with, of the titles that are listed, what one are you looking forward to the most? And we'd love to hear about that from you. And then make sure you subscribe to our channel or follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Tracy, for being here and having this
Thank
conversation
you.
with me. I always look forward to our chats about any number of topics. It's always entertaining and fun. So thank you both for being here. And thank you for listening, everybody. And thank you for your support. And we'll see you later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.